All right, hello there. My name is Matt Golding, and this is the second in our South Bay Entrepreneurial Center Zoom interview series. I have a background in marketing and business development. My company is Storyline Strategy, and I'm a mentor here at the SBEC. And we're very excited about this new series where we're interviewing local entrepreneurs and inspirational leaders and individuals who have great insight into the entrepreneurial process. Today we have Mark Hiraide again. Mark was in our featured speaker in our first interview. Mark, just to refresh your memory, is a corporate and securities partner at Mitchell, Silberg and Knupp. He's a former branch chief of the Securities and Exchange Commission in LA and in Washington, D.C. Mark has a passion for representing entrepreneurs and participating in crowdfunding provisions, and he was involved with the Jumpstart Our Business, the Jobs Act, passed in 2012. Mark is a fellow mentor at the SBEC and assisted the founder of the SBEC, Lee Petalon, who was forming and founding individual to the organization. So he's on the board at the SBEC and is just a great help here with everything we do. Our featured speaker is Alex Baier, founder and CEO of Genius Juice. His mission is to bring nutrition, such as smoothies, into the mainstream and make them accessible to all consumers. His product improves the quality of life and allows people to live happier and healthier lives. He wants to share his gift of pure genius to the world. He started his business in 2014. We're going to have him go into a little bit more detail, but it started in 2014, and Genius Juice is now available in over 1,300 stores. So we welcome both Mark and Alex to today's session. We're going to be talking primarily today, exclusively today, about crowdfunding and the importance of equity crowdfunding. And what we're excited about is that Alex has actually gone through that process. And so we're going to kind of do a deep dive into what he experienced in that process. As we talked about last week, there are a lot of different ways to raise capital, through angels, through family and friends, through VCs, through banks. But crowdfunding, in particular equity crowdfunding, is something new and something that should be considered. There have been a lot of rules and regulations that have changed over time, and some that are most recent because of COVID-19 and that you need to be aware of. So I'm going to actually let Mark chime in with what's new in that regard.
Sure. Thank you, Matthew. It's good to be here. What's new in regard to equity crowdfunding, which has only been around since 2016 when the SEC passed the rules under the Jobs Act. What's new is that on May 4th, the SEC issued a temporary rule to allow companies to utilize regulation crowdfunding and raise very quickly and easily up to $250,000. They've relaxed the rule that you're required to get a CPA review of your financial statements for offerings over 100,000. Under this rule, they will allow you to raise up to 250,000 without getting a CPA review. You only need self-certified financial statements. And the rule has a couple other provisions, like they will even allow you to commence your offering before you've completed your financial statements, as long as you deliver the financial statements before you take in any money. You have to take advantage of the rule, commence the offering before August 31st, and you have to have been in business and formed for at least 6 months. The temporary rule does not apply to startups, newly formed businesses.
Great, very helpful. And thank you again for joining. And if there are comments or questions I haven't asked or elements that need further explanation, feel free to jump in anytime.
Sure.
And so we're excited to welcome Alex. Alex, I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier, it was a former SBEC cohort as well. So he's an alumnus and went through the process and has, again, some unique experience, firsthand experience in crowdfunding and Wefunder in particular. So I'd love to throw it over to you, Alex. Give about a 5 or 10 minute overview of your journey, how you found your way to crowdfunding, how you chose Wefunder, and we'll drill down to some of those key experiences. So,
very well. Thank you, Matt, for having me on this Zoom call. Mark, always good to reconnect with you. So, and just love being a part of the SBEC community. I've been, involved with the SBEC since probably 2015, right after starting Genius Juice. So thank you again. It's an honor to be on this Zoom call. Thanks for having me. So I'm the CEO of Genius Juice. As Matt mentioned, it's a whole coconut smoothie. And I think what's cool about the product is we blend real young Thai coconuts. We take the inside of a young Thai coconut, the water and the meat. We have a facility in Thailand where we freshly harvest them, crack them open, take everything out, blend it, and then we bottle it here, and it's made here in the United States, actually locally in Southern California. So the product itself is pretty amazing. There's really nothing else like it on the market right now. It's not easy to make a product that's so artisanal and fresh and organic and clean. And so we're really proud of that. We really, stand behind 100% on the quality and the benefits of our product. So as Matt mentioned, we started in 2014. We brought in one of the ex-president of Odwalla, and he was also the CEO of Evolution Fresh before they got sold to Starbucks. So he came in and helped us with our branding, and a lot of people don't know that. So he helped, he worked with me collaboratively. We came up with the branding of the Genius Head, which is now prominently on all of our branding and on our website, and most importantly on our bottles that are in the stores. Since launching, we're now in a list of different retailers that we're really proud of our partnerships. We're in Whole Foods in 4 regions, including Southern California, Northern California, Rockies, and also Northeast. Our most recent launch was New York and New Jersey,
Great.
which has been interesting. We launched during the pandemic in the Northeast, so that's been a lot to handle just to keep the product on shelf there in Whole Foods. And we're also in Albertsons, Vons, Pavilions for anyone that's in Southern California, which is most of the people watching here. And other choice retailers, H-E-B, we're getting into Target in about 3 months. We're in Publix starting in about 3 weeks in Florida. So a lot of really good traction with our product. One of the biggest things that I learned is that whatever money you think you need and resources you think you need to run a business, especially in food and beverage, you normally need about double that amount, 2 to 3 times that amount. So whatever's on your projections, it's pretty easy. Just multiply it by 2, and that's what you need. So I learned that early on that this especially any business that you create, especially for distribution, production, where you have assets, you have inventory, you need a lot of money since a lot of your resources are tied up in inventory. So we really had to raise money early on, and I started out just to kind of go into the history of the money that we've raised and when we raised it and what our strategy has been. Is we raised a lot of money up front in the first year or 2 from angel investors, a lot of friends and family, colleagues of mine that I've met in the past. And we raised roughly, give or take, a little under $1 million in our first couple of years to leverage the opportunities that we got with Whole Foods, right? We had to make product, market the product, support the product, support our retailers. And so that money helped early on. But in the last 2 years or so, I found that once you get past the stage of friends and family, most brands, especially that are in my position, it's called crossing the chasm, right? You raise early and then you grow and you're above $1 million in sales. And then you're like, okay, I need to go out and raise VC money. I need like $2 to $3 million to really lift this brand up and to catapult it. And it's really hard to raise that kind of money when you're still 1 to 5 million in revenue. It's hard to go to an institutional investor and say, like, I need a $3 million check. Here's what I want to do with that. Here's where I want to go with it. Here's where we'll be after we use that money. They normally don't talk to guys like us until we're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million in revenue and up. So we're in this, they call it the valley of death in our business, where you're too big to raise from the small guys because it's not going to really make a big impact on your operations, but you're too small to raise from the VCs and the private equity of the world. So this is where I think the topic of this conversation comes into play, which is online crowdfunding. It's a great way to raise money. It's easy. When I say easy, it's easy to set up. Not easy to raise it, but easy to set up. And it's a really accessible way to scale your fundraising nationally, and without having to go person to person, which in my day is very hard to do now. Maybe in the beginning I could go person to person, but it's a lot harder to do. So we decided to join the format of Wefunder. There's a lot of different ones that are out there. We went with Wefunder. There's a lot of great reasons we went with them. So with Wefunder, we found that it was a very valuable experience because we got to reach a lot of people on a single format, on a single website. And what I love about crowdfunding is you can really tell your story on your page. You can show a video, you can show your financials, which hurt some and help others, depending on your financials. You can really communicate to people why you need funding. And it really goes beyond just the money. Like, people want to support brands that are on crowdfunding websites. If they love your product, or if they've tried your product, which a lot of people that invested have already found our product nationally in all sorts of retailers. If they support your product, they like your story, they support the CEO and the founders and the managing team, they're going to come in and they're going to be investing money. So that's how I think it's power in numbers is really the easiest way to put it. Is you're not going to get people putting in $10,000 every single minute, but you're going to get a lot of people putting in $100 or $250 or $500, which most everyone can afford, right? And that's going to add up to a really good amount of money. So we ended up raising $480,000 on Wefunder. We were probably one of the top 10 highest grossing campaigns on Wefunder in Wefunder history. I was hoping that we would get to 50,000. That was my initial goal. I'm like, if we get to 50,000, we can actually keep the money. It becomes a bona fide fundraise, and we definitely exceeded that. So it was a really great experience. It was hard to raise from VCs, and this was a great way to raise money in a quick way without spending a lot of time on it.
Right. So let's take a little bit of break and kind of backtrack a little bit. So you had raised about $1 million in friends and family and angels, et cetera. And then at what point did you say we need something else to help fund inventory or marketing or whatever it was? And how did you make that decision to go to crowdfunding?
I think we realized that we needed to raise more in a quicker fashion in 2019, when we were growing a lot. Cash flow, there was a lot more demand. There was a lot more demand on cash flow for our company. And we needed to produce more product, and we got a lot of new retailer opportunities that were not present before, which takes money for inventory and marketing. So that was really the point where we decided we need to do something else here, because the environment to raise money at our revenue rate is very difficult to raise the amount of money we needed. So that was the point where we really wanted to get creative and use online crowdfunding as a boost in our round. So we opened a round of about 1.2 million on Convertible Note back in late 2019. And we decided that instead of just me spending a lot of time going person to person, let's use Wefunder as a crutch to boost the crowdfunding and get more money in the bank, and also really have a successful round of capital raising. So that was the big reason behind it.
Okay.
And the one other thing that I'll add is that we also aired on Shark Tank.
I was going to get to that. Like that was not a small piece.
Yeah. So just one little thing,
Yeah.
And we aired on Shark Tank on January 19th, 2020. We went to our attorney and asked him, is it okay if we can raise on Wefunder, during, like, while Shark Tank is airing and right after it airs, on national television? And our attorney said, as long as we're not selling securities on our own website, we're good. As long as we're selling it on a different entity platform. And so we wanted to also really maximize all the 3 million people that are watching us on Shark Tank to go on Wefunder and also invest, which is pretty cool that you can see it live on you can see it on television. And then if you love the brand, you can go on invest and actually get a piece of the company. So that was another big reason we did it.
It's probably a topic for a whole other interview about the Shark Tank experience.
Oh, yeah.
But we won't go down that rabbit hole, but it certainly did play to be an important part of your, was that strategic to use them in conjunction with crowdfunding, or was it just serendipity that they both happened?
It was definitely it was by design. Yeah. Okay. Like we knew that even without Shark Tank, we could still probably raise at least about 100,000 just from our traction with our brand and how, it's some notoriety behind it and existing fans. But once we taped Shark Tank, which was mid 2019, and it, by the way, took 8 months before it aired, we had a lot of time to think about how to leverage that opportunity. And we thought, as long as our show airs, right, you're not guaranteed to air once you tape on Shark Tank. We're like, this is a perfect time to do crowdfunding. But I want to make it clear that even if you don't have a leverage point like Shark Tank, where you can get a lot of people from that, it's still just an awesome idea to do crowdfunding. I mean, there's downsides to it, which I can get into. It's not all rainbows and butterflies, but
we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, I told you I talk too much.
It's all good, all good. But that the opportunity to be on Shark Tank did jumpstart, and tell us the numbers because they're phenomenal after that aired. What did you experience?
The sales numbers we did in 24 hours, 120,000 in revenue.
On Wefunder.
Sorry, I'm talking sales. On
Okay,
Wefunder, so on Wefunder, going into when you start an equity crowdfunding platform, you have at least with Wefunder, you have a period which is the pre-launch, okay? And a really good strategy with Wefunder is you want to get people from the outside in. So you get, investors, people that and you tell them, I know you're going to invest in me. You're going to write me a $10,000 check, a $25,000 check. Do it through Wefunder, because the more traction that we have on Wefunder, when it becomes public and all the Wefunder investors come in, if they see that money's already in the fund, they're more likely to invest. So it's kind of like a busy restaurant. You're more likely to go there and eat. That's right. That's my metaphor here. So when we launched our Wefunder campaign late December 2019, and we had about 3 weeks to build it up before it became live. So I think we got about 95,000 in before it went live. I got some investors put in 30,000, some put in 1,000. My father put in 500. Like everyone put in money, like friends and family, everyone. And it was a united charge. And we knew that once it went live, and we made it go live the morning of our airing on Shark Tank. So we did that on purpose. In 48 hours, we did over 100,000 on Wefunder after it aired, after Shark Tank aired. So that really was the big boost. So I guess in summation, if you're going to do a crowdfunding website, get people from the outside to invest in it. And once there's traction there, like 25,000 or 50,000, investors that are on the platform, the crowdfunding platform, that are members of Wefunder or whatever it is, are more likely to invest and hop on the train.
So you got about $100,000 plus in funding and in sales. I cut you off. I'm sorry. You also had quite a bump too from Shark Tank.
Yeah, we got 120,000 in sales from Shark Tank, and then after 3 weeks, we did about $250,000 in sales. So it was really, luckily they didn't hate the product, so they liked the product, so that helped.
So you touched on it briefly, but there are a variety of different crowdfunding sites out there. How did you choose Wefunder over some of the other ones?
Yeah, there's Start Engine, which is a popular one. There's Republic, and there's Wefunder. And I think what did it for us is, I think all of them do this, but there's a rolling close. A rolling close is where you can raise a certain amount of money, and as you're still raising, you can take money out as you go. So like when we raised our first $250,000 on Wefunder, I'm like, I don't want to stop the campaign, but I want to take money out. So I was able to take money out very easily, and they wired it within a week after we hit that milestone. So I think the ease of rolling close and how easy it was to work with them was a factor. But I think the biggest factor is I had a personal rep at Wefunder. And again, this is, I think, a great marketing, plug for them. And I'm not saying Start Engine and Republic are not good. I'm sure they're good in their own respects. But what made a difference for me is that they really took care of us. Like a rep from Wefunder drove up to meet with me in person. They strategized with me. They helped me build the page. They were very hands-on with the entire process because they knew that if they fostered us and helped us build the page right, that'd be a successful campaign for everyone. I think the other thing I like about Wefunder is they do a great job on clearly telling the story of the brand on the website. Their format is really simple. They have a video, they have a story, and they have updates to the investors, which really was very vital during the campaign to provide milestone updates. So that really helped as well.
Alex, did they charge you for marketing services, and what kind of marketing services did they provide? It sounds like they kind of coached you on the content of your video, and they kind of scheduled the updates. Is that correct?
Yeah, they didn't charge. Surprisingly, I don't know if other competitors do it, but they didn't charge us anything for the marketing of it. They did charge a fee, which they do take out of the final amount raised, which I think is combined, it's all rolled up into that fee, all their services. And it's 7.5% of whatever amount that you raise. So you raise $100,000, they take $7,500 at the end of the day once you take the money out. But along the way, they didn't charge any marketing fees. There were no retainers with them. They essentially took a chance and helped us out to build our campaign and make it successful.
So it really was no cost up front. There's a percentage, in this case, 7.5% on the back end, 7.5% of the total amount raised, and no other fees for the portal. Is that right?
No other fees for the portal. There is which I think is a good time for you to get into this, and you touched on it in the beginning, that we did pay a CPA to do a third-party financial review. They wanted to do it for the last 2 years of doing business, so 2018. Actually, at the time, because we started the campaign in 2019, they did 2017 and 2018. So they did a full third-party financial review. It cost me about $2,000 to do it. It took them about 1 week. They signed off on it, and then they uploaded that to our page for any investor to see as part of our fiduciary duty. But I think what's been your experience with hiring third-party attorneys with crowdfunding? What's the process been like?
Yeah, so like anything, there's kind of a gamut in terms of services provided. If you go to a kind of a large or mid-sized accounting firm, they typically are going to charge a lot more than a few $1,000s. It depends, of course, on how many years of financial statements you have to review. The SEC requires that you have two full years if you've been in business that long, if not from inception. But like with lawyers, you have some professionals that have been doing this for years and may charge more, and others who are, recently. It seems like after the Jobs Act, there are a lot of securities lawyers and a lot of accountants who have been involved in this area. So it really varies. So you really have to shop. But one thing that probably helps is, I assume that, Alex, you had already prepared financial statements. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, with the accounting firm that we're working with and our financial partners, we already had all those prepared. So it made things a lot easier. So when we passed them off to the third-party CPA, she was able to, maybe that's why the cost was so low, because she spent very few hours on it, since it was already all in place and we didn't really have to go back and edit that many things. So that's that. I think, in reading between the lines and what you said, just really good to have your financials all in order before you start this process, because it's going to cost you a lot, more money down the road to get it corrected, especially if you're getting it reviewed by a third-party CPA that's going to spend more hours than what it originally should have been to get them in order and get them ready for the equity crowdfunding campaign.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. In my experience, the biggest impediment to raising seed capital through equity crowdfunding is the cost of the review. And as I mentioned in the last video and at the start of this one, this temporary SEC rule waives that requirement for offerings up to $250,000.
Yeah, that's great.
So let's take another step back. So for someone who doesn't know much about equity crowdfunding, you've raised almost just shy of $500,000. What do you have to give up for that? What did you spend? What have you spent it on? Are there requirements of what you can do with that, or is it just, how does that work?
Yeah, a lot of great questions. So the first thing, you can set up your fundraise in 3 different types of capital raise. And again, I think Mark is really the foremost authority on this. And if he wants to jump in, there's one of them that I'm not entirely familiar with, which I'm sure you are. One is convertible note, which is what we did. So we did a $6 million valuation cap, which means, and investors are actually note holders, right? And then they convert over to equity at a qualified financing round. It's a whole other Zoom cast to even talk about that, but go on Investopedia and just Google it and you can find out what a convertible note round is if you're not familiar with it. Really good for companies that are younger that don't want to be pigeonholed to a valuation, to do a convertible note, and you kind of kick the valuation down the curb for the investors. And most investors on Wefunder, no easy way to say it. Normally, they don't really care too much if they're doing a lower amount. They just want to know they're going to get a piece of the company and get equity at some point, either right away or deferred with a convertible note. The second raise is equity, priced round, which is the most familiar. Everyone knows that. The company's valued at $1 million. You put in $100,000, you get roughly 10% pre-money of for your investment, 10% of the company. The third one, which I think Mark should touch on, because I've seen a lot of campaigns on this on Wefunder, Republic, and Start Engine, is a SAFE, a simple agreement for equity. I'm not entirely familiar on that structure. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the 3 that Alex mentioned are the 3 customary vehicles, instruments for what I call customary equity investments, as opposed to investments in a company that is not customarily a candidate for an equity investment, which typically is like a small business that doesn't have plans to go public or probably isn't going to get acquired. Because like in Alex's case, the investors are going to want equity because their return is probably going to be when the company, when it does eventually have a liquidity event or say a sale, the equity investors are going to participate in that. And so those investors are typically looking for either the straight equity that Alex mentioned or a instrument that converts into equity. The SAFE is very similar to a convertible note. It's an agreement that converts into equity. The difference between that and the convertible note, though, is that it's not debt. The convertible note, as the note name suggests, is a debt obligation. The company, if it doesn't conduct a qualified financing, at which time that note converts to equity, then the company has to repay the note. With the SAFE agreement, and in the last 5 years, 7 years, the SAFE has become one of the more prominent instruments used in raising startup capital. There's no obligation on the company to repay it. It either converts or it doesn't. The reason I mention conventional equity candidates and non-conventional equity candidates is that it's important to keep in mind that crowdfunding may also be used by companies that are small businesses that have not been traditional equity candidates, if they're a good business, if they have revenue or profits or the prospect of profitability, they can actually share a percentage of profits from a product or a revenue stream, as opposed to actually sell equity. They can do so by selling what's known as an investment contract, and you can do that through equity crowdfunding.
Great, thanks. So getting back, you have all these investors. What do you give up with that, and how do you manage all these small, the people who've given, the 50 or 100 or a couple $1,000? How burdensome, if at all, is that?
I mean, the part that my advisory board was really worried about is like, do you have to do, our 800, we raised from 802 different people, on Wefunder. And their biggest concern was, are they going to be like hitting you up for, how's the company doing? What are your sales? And like all these different things. And the way that we've combated that is we do a quarterly update for all the shareholders. We do it through, a mail newsletter service, right? Because there's so many of them. And then we also have an email for more of our intimate investors that have invested directly with us and not through Wefunder. So I think that's important, is to manage the expectations that they can't just call you up. If I had 802 people calling me, I probably have to change my number, So, but as far as how it looks structurally, this is, again, we closed our campaign in mid-April, but just finished all the paperwork and all the legality of it in the last week or so. But my understanding of it from Wefunder, right, we're still working, it's still fluid and we're working through it, is that all the investors show up under one line item on the cap table, under the Wefunder line item. I don't know exactly how that would be listed, but you also have to keep in mind that if you raise on an equity crowdfunding platform, you're going to go in again and raise more from an institutional investor or from a more sophisticated investor. They're not going to be happy if they see 802 people on the cap table, right? There's liability issues. People can come back and maybe sue you. Like, it really opens up a lot of liability. So being very clear on the structure of it, what are the powers of these shareholders? And I mean, they have voting rights, right? That's part of the deal. But essentially, they're treated exactly the same as if someone came up to me on the street and said, I want to give you $25,000. I want a convertible note. They get the same rights, the same, the same voting rights. Everything is exactly in tandem with any other investor that comes in outside of Wefunder. So that's important to know. And I think anyone who's anyone who's raising on Wefunder, really important to have a system and process on communicating clearly and directly with those members that invest to keep them in the loop. Because if they're not in the loop, that's when you can start having problems, right? If they don't get a shareholder communication, they don't know what the sales are, and they don't know how the company's doing, people start to get upset with that. And that's when it can bite you in the butt.
So how much equity did you give up there?
I gave up, I should look at my spreadsheet now, but we raised roughly 480,000 at a 6 million valuation. So I guess roughly it's a little less, it's like 8%. I got to do the math right now.
Roughly,
but
okay.
The important thing though, I guess to answer your question, we've given up zero because it's not equity yet. Because it's on a convertible note. Understood. And also on a convertible note, it accrues interest as well. So anyone who invests as part of loaning the company money on a convertible note, it does accrue interest by the time it converts. So I would imagine by the time it converts with interest, it's going to be somewhere around 9%, if I had to guess. So
great.
Yeah, Matt, I just want to make one thing clear. What Alex has said about the shareholders on the cap table is generally correct. And without getting into too much of the weeds, the one thing is, though, that the securities laws have a lot of remedies. And so one thing you don't do by having a nominee appear on behalf of those shareholders on your cap table is it doesn't eliminate or reduce liability. You're still liable under the securities laws. And so that's not a reason to incorporate one of these structures to reduce the number of shareholders on your cap table.
Okay, thanks. So Alex, you'd mentioned that Wefunder did a great job of telling your story, of promoting it. How much of it did you have to bring to the table? How does one get best seen? Is the burden on you, or is it in partnership with Wefunder? How do you best tell your story and get that visibility?
Yeah, the answer is both. The burden's on, it's a partnership, right? And it goes back to why we selected Wefunder in the first place, where they were incredibly supportive, both with the setup, getting the page set up and positioning us for the best chance of success. But like I mentioned before, like the burden's on both of us, because the burden's on me to get people in from the beginning, to get traction and momentum on our crowdfunding page. And then once you get enough investment on there, I mean, I would say as a rule of thumb, 25,000 looks really good. It's all very optic. It's all psychological at that point. If it looks like it's enough, 25,000 to 50,000, something in that range, you start to get momentum from the platform, right? From the community. And that's another reason I selected Wefunder, is they have over 300,000 members that are actively investing on the platform. So once you get to a certain level, they have, and every crowdfunding platform has a program where once you get to a certain milestone, whether it's 50,000, 100,000, it triggers the crowdfunding platform to say, okay, now we're going to step in because this is a hot deal now. Mm-hmm. We're going to put it on the front page for every visitor to see. And if they're a great crowdfunding partner, which, hopefully you pick the right one, they're going to also promote it through email. And one thing that, I mentioned to you, Matt, when we first met, is that once we hit 100,000, Wefunder is triggered to do an email campaign. And they do an email campaign, which normally most people do not open emails, right? When they're, from a company that you subscribe to, right? Wefunder members are very loyal. So when they see a hot deal, the open rate is, I believe, about 30%, which is huge, right? Most campaigns the open rate is less than 5%. If you send an email out to a bunch of people, Wefunder investors are very hands-on with the Wefunder investments. That's how we raised $100,000 overnight. Is Wefunder sent out an email, Genius is on Shark Tank, it's a hot deal, invest now. And they really help propel it to the 200,000 and up zone. And once you're at 200,000, it really starts to, edge towards 500,000. So it's really on the burden of us to get it started. And then if you have a great crowdfunding partner, they're going to take it even further with their efforts.
Okay. And you had a video, you had other pieces of content too. Were those critical pieces to drive attention and get eyeballs on and then click through?
Yeah, it was, I'm trying to say it without laughing. We did. It's
a very understated video too, right? It's very,
it's very conservative, right? Very conservative. It's not like we're rapping with wigs on in the middle of a park in Palos Verdes or anything like that. And, big credit to Jeff Coven, who videoed, he's part of the SBEC. He videoed and edited that entire thing. And it looks like a professional. We did a music video. Right. So my big thing is make it entertaining and make it fun. It's your chance to emotionally connect with the followers that are on Wefunder. And it could become viral, right? You never know, it could become viral. And that's how the internet is. You have a great video, people will start watching it and you get a lot of views. So we did we took the route of not being too serious and not just me being in front of a camera saying, here's what our company is about. Here is our product. Here is our traction. Here's our growth. I just wanted to make it fun, make it memorable, get people to, loosen up a little bit and maybe put some money in. And it worked.
You succeeded.
We did a rap video. We created our own Genius Juice song. We did it in Robert Ryan Park in Palos Verdes. It was really hilarious because it was raining the day we did the video shoot. So Jeff, Coven, who did the video, had an umbrella above his camera, filming the whole thing. But it worked out great. And just, I think my big thing, keep it fun, keep it light, but also informative about how your product is taking, or your brand is growing. And also why you need the money. That's really, really key. What is the use of funds? Like if you raise the money, why do you need it? Is it for growth? Is it for production? Hopefully it's for growth, right? It's not getting out of debt or something. And how is it going to help your company get to the next level? And that's where you can emotionally connect with the investors, because they know if they put money in, they can see your company grow. So that's a big part too.
So that's a leading question. So what's next for you? You've raised $500,000. What's the next hurdle, challenge, goal for you in terms of raising cash?
Yeah, I mean, the hurdles never end, and raising money really, until you become fully, profitable, which we're still not profitable yet, given the size of our company. But you just got to keep on raising money. So our next step is that we're going in either for another bridge round, or a Series A. We're still deciding that. It's harder right now, and as I'm sure you can ask Mark, to raise money from VCs right now in this environment with the pandemic. It's just harder. It's harder to get that kind of money. It's harder to go through due diligence. Companies, VCs are being more tight with their money, and they're reinvesting more in their current portfolio brands versus going out and investing in a new brand.
Right.
So we're kind of weighing the options on, do we go out for a Series A, given that we're at a growth level now where we can, or do we just raise little by little on a convertible note or on a bridge round and keep going? So I don't have that answer today, since we're still looking at how the pandemic is shaping, or is it on its way out? Is it going to continue through the rest of the year? How is that affecting investors and their mentality on putting in a larger sum of money into a new brand? But either way, we're going to know in the summertime. But I think what's exciting is we have 3 big launches coming up. We have Publix in Florida, we have Target on the West Coast and the East Coast, and we have HEB, which is in Texas, a big retailer in Texas. And the money from Wefunder is allowing us to leverage that opportunity to support the stores and get the product in their stores. So it's really cool how the investors see an immediate response and an immediate, growth, event from putting their money in. And that's what I like. I like to give those updates. We've gotten into these stores, we're growing. These are all good things to share. So
is there anything, as you look back, that you wish you would have done differently, or something that prepared you most to take on the challenge, other than having all of your financials in place? Is there any ahas, either side of the spectrum there, that you can share?
In regards to the Wefunder campaign?
Yeah, in preparing for it, yeah.
Yeah. I hate to stroke my own ego, but I think we did a great job on it.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, we leveraged the Shark Tank opportunity in a great way, in a legal way. And we had a great video. Jeff Cove did an awesome job on that. And we had a great story. We had a great team. Again, I think it just all comes down to picking the right partner. And I would do, before just settling on one crowdfunding campaign, my big advice for anyone watching that wants to raise money online, which I think is a great time to do it, right, is pick the right partner, interview at least 3 different crowdfunding partners, see who you vibe with best, see where the best energy is at, and who's really going to support your brand the most. That's my advice. Great.
One last question, then I'm going to throw it to Mark if he has any other follow-up questions or comments. But being an SBEC alum, you've seen a spectrum of different types of small businesses, entrepreneurial endeavors through your cohorts or some of the recent alumni. Do you have any advice, and where on the list should crowdfunding be for some of those SBEC type cohorts?
It really depends on, it's case by case. I can't give a blanketed answer because it depends on the stage of your business and your cash needs. Some companies may not even need to raise You know, they may just want to work on becoming profitable, sustainable, increasing your margins, increasing your cash flow, and not having to give out equity, you know, on a crowdfunding. But I think crowdfunding is a great marketing tool as well, because you're getting a bunch of new people that not only are investing, but also buying the product, right? Like they're going to go online, especially if you're online and they're investing from all over the country, they're going to go online and buy your product. So I would say totally depends on your situation. If you're needing to raise money, you know you need money, I would start early. I would start 6 months early before you run out. And I would just put all the pieces in place, make sure you have a great story, a great video. The only other advice I would give is make sure that you have some kind of market traction, you know, like on the webs, on Wefunder or Republic or Start Engine. Many investors look at your financials, they look at your sales, they look at, you know, what's going on, how are you growing, like what are the new opportunities you have. By having opportunities and traction, that's going to help your campaign lift off a lot quicker than if you're pre-revenue or brand new. So I would say that's my big, you know, cautionary tale. Have traction before you launch on a crowdfunding campaign to get people excited to come on and invest.
Great. Mark, any last thoughts, comments, questions?
Well, one question, Alex. I'm curious to know the size of the individual investments. Say, what percentage of the total amount raised on Wefunder came from investors who invested less than 1,000? And then maybe what was the median investment amount and what was the largest? And the reason I ask is because in my experience, crowdfunding generally generates a larger number of investors, but smaller in investment amount, which is partly why it's so difficult. On the other, I mean, by the flip side, if you're able to get something viral, it becomes a little easier. What were the metrics in your case?
You know, I would need to pull it to find the actual averaging, like I was actually trying to open a spreadsheet while you were talking to like pull that. But I can say that 80% of the investments, at least 80% or more, were under $500.
Okay.
So that I can give you kind of that ballpark, where most people are coming in for, you know, smaller amounts. They want to dip their toe in the water. And then 1,000 and up is about 12 to 15%, you know, in that range. Mm-hmm. And then 5% is like, you know, above 1,000. Either from the most of them are from the outside, you know, that I brought in that put in that kind of money, right? They got to know me to put in that kind of money. So, but that was really the median that I saw was usually around, if I averaged it, cost average it out, it was like $300 to $400 was the average across the board. But again, you know, like I said, it's really power in numbers on crowdfunding. You get a lot of people to put in a little bit of money. It's really going to add up. One extra point I want to make, the minimum that you set, I'm really glad you asked that. The minimum you set on the crowdfunding, like the minimum amount to get to be an investor, is also really important. Start low, start at $100. And once you get over, you know, whatever when you see that you have traction, maybe over 100,000 or 50,000, you up the minimum. And the reason you up the minimum is to make it look more premium and to make it look more of a high value investment. And I found, like we found as a team when we did, you know, when we looked at all the data, that when we upped it from 100 to 100 minimum to $250 as the minimum, we got almost the same amount of engagement from it. So it seems like if someone's going to like, you know, if someone loves your product and wants to support you, if they're going to put in 100, they'll probably put in 250, right? So that's what I learned too, is, you know, really pay attention to your minimums and slowly raise your minimums as you go through the campaign, and you can get a lot more bang for your buck that way.
Now, do you need to provide swag or product to those investors, or is that at the discretion of the person who's looking for money?
Yeah, we do actually. That's a really good question. I totally overlooked that. Is we do have swag for different levels of investment, kind of like the Kickstarter, right? You know, format. So I think what we did was anyone over 250, was it 250, got 6 free coupons and a hat, and we just mailed it out to them. Anyone over $500 gets a free 6-pack of our smoothies, and plus a hat, plus coupons. So it's really good to have the right perks. And again, like the biggest thing, these 802 investors that invested in us, they're not only going to be investors, they're going to be customers.
Right.
They're going to be customers. They want to support the brand and they like the brand. So by giving them free product and coupons, they're going to be going online and, buying it over and over again. So, and for the top, and for like kind of the top dog investors, we gave them 15% off plus all the other perks, a percentage off on all their purchases for like 1 year on geniusjuice.com. So I think, you just got to keep that in mind, that your investors will become your customers.
Okay. Great information.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mark, before we start wrapping up?
No, that was very insightful and I'm sure very helpful to the listeners.
Yeah. Alex, Mark, thank you so much for the amount of time you've given us, your perspective. It really was fun to listen to. We could probably keep on going. Certainly, I do want to, if you're willing, have a little bit deeper dive into your Shark Tank experience.
Sure.
Sure, that always happens to come up in conversation with entrepreneurs saying, oh, we need to get on Shark Tank, but what is that really all about? How hard is it? So that's a conversation for another day if you're up for it.
I'll wear my the Einstein wig.
There you go.
Our next interview. That's what I wore on Shark Tank. So
thank you. So much key information. My 3 biggest takeaways amongst many, but one was that you went into this with a strategy. You were prepared. I mean, you knew what you wanted out of it. It wasn't just a random circumstance. That was a key piece. Crowdfunding in general is a great way to tell a story in a way that is uniquely suited for that medium. And that Wefunder in particular was a great partner, that they helped with the rolling out, and we were able to take out funds, and the partnership that they created with you. So those are my biggest 3 takeaways. So there were a lot of other ones, but those kind of rose to the top. So again, thank you. I've done this with Mark, and hopefully we'll do it with others. Totally a random question, but do you have a favorite business book, entrepreneurial book, motivational book that inspires you, that would be something that a listener might say, hey, if Alex read it, I want to read it too?
Sure. I really like the book Profit First. That's a really good one. I cannot remember for the life of me the guy's last name. It's like Mike McAllowicz, I think is his last name.
We'll get a research team on that and put a link below. So
yeah.
Thank you.
So Profit First is really good, and it teaches you how to put profit first in your business. That's what it says, right. What it is.
Sounds good. Again, thank you. That does it for our second iteration of this Zoom interview series. If whoever's watching this likes what you've seen, make sure you share it with a friend and share the link and have people visit the SBEC website. Again, thank you.
Matt,
yes.
Do you mind if I mention one other thing really quick? Maybe my contact information if someone wants to get in touch with either
Sure,
Mark.
that'd be great. Yep, we'll also have a link below, but sure, sure.
Okay. Yeah, anyone can email me at alex@geniusjuice.com.
Fantastic. And we'll also have Mark's information too.
Right. Feel free to contact me anytime.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. Be well, stay safe, and appreciate your time. Have a good day.